So we're here at the OLPC Summit here in San Francisco. So who are you?
Hi, I'm Bernie Innocenti from Sugar Labs mostly. I work at Google currently. I'm a volunteer for the software side of One Laptop Per Child, and I visited many deployments over the past 3-4 years.
So what has been your involvement in OLPC in history?
So initially I joined OLPC in 2007, if I remember correctly, and I joined in Boston the engineering team just a few months before mass production. So I worked on finishing the platform, software, the physical thing, make it work before we started shipping them initially to Uruguay and other deployments later on.
So it's based on Linux Red Hat?
Yeah, so we were working side by side with at least 5 Red Hat engineers in the beginning. Red Hat has been an incredible contributor. They have been the initial developers of Sugar. They have made many of the drivers, the hardware drivers, work. They provided incredible engineering resources for us that we couldn't have gone to mass production without them, for sure.
What was your role together with Walter Bender? How did you work?
So Walter Bender is leads by example, like leads by doing. He's our source of inspiration. He's a visionary who has a very, very long vision, and working with him is incredibly. It's an amazing experience because he always sees a little bit ahead of everybody else what we can do with technology in education. Like many of us Sugar Labs people, he focuses very much on the education side, much less on the hardware. I've been working on the hardware mostly because this is my area of expertise from my past work, but I'm also interested in this project from an educational point of view mostly. So now I'm seeing where it's going, and I'm seeing children, it changed the lives of children, so the hardware side is kind of shadowed by these more important topics.
So how do you go from concept, ideas, brainstorming, all the way to actually programming the whole thing and the hardware optimizations, software optimizations? How does it work?
Oh, it's an iterative process.
Are you involved in the whole process?
So I've been involved in various areas, not all of them. Like, for example, I didn't do any work on hardware. I've never been where the laptops are being physically produced, but I've been in many areas where the laptops are being used in schools. So this time there is a little bit of disconnections between the end users, like teachers and children, and us engineers working on the physical thing and making the next version of the software and the hardware. We need better feedback, a better feedback loop in order for us to target them better and figure out what problems they currently have and how we can best solve them. This is kind of missing, but like we're trying to figure out how to get this channel to work.
So have you been? You needed to work very closely, or like know everything about the AMD processor in X01, and then everything needs to be known about what VIA can do in X01 1.5, and what can happen once you have 1.75. There's maybe GPU acceleration. What do you think can be done there to speed things up?
So the X01 is a very nice machine. It's slightly faster than the X01.5. It uses much less power. It's better technology. You can see this for yourself by just comparing the motherboards. You can see the difference. ARM is an emerging technology. Well, it's been emerging for the past 10 years, but it's now an emerging technology on netbooks as well. So this is the way to go. This is the future, and deployments are going to like the X01.75 even more than the X01.5. The software is the same one. We just ported it. Our software is free software, so most of the activities just work, and some of them need to be ported with a little bit of work. But we're busy in finishing the platform and getting the activities there. But it's going to be a very smooth transition for users, in my opinion.
But is there something you can do to take advantage of the GPU? You know, like the hardware accelerate things, like the UI? Do you think it can be done?
So I don't know where things stand exactly now, because I've not been working in platform support for a while, so I fell off the. I mean, I'm not involved enough. But ARM processors really come with embedded OpenGL acceleration, and we can certainly improve Sugar amazingly if we get good hardware accelerated 3D. It's going to become a requirement for most UIs from now on, so we'd better have it. I'm not sure whether the XO1.75 is going to have 3D acceleration or not yet.
So you work at Google now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you have this yesterday you had this hand problem because you type a lot on the keyboard. What do you do?
Oh yeah, like my hand is kind of hurting at this time.
Why do you type so much? What do you do typing?
So typically at Google you work a lot. Typically you work much more than the 8 hours, the typical 8 hours of a workday. And besides these, I also have OLPC and Sugar Labs on as my main interests. So it's kind of like having two jobs. And besides this, like everybody else, like you communicate with friends and family. I'm Italian, I live abroad, so I need my computer also for this sort of activities. This makes my day, so it makes me use the computer almost all day.
So what's your experience with all the people working at Google and the atmosphere over there? Do you think it's compatible with OLPC?
Oh, it's a very vibrant work environment. I really like it. It looks like a startup, even though it's a very large corporate at this time. Google always has been friendly to free software projects like Sugar, and they have been incredibly generous. In the past, they have given us support in. So they have been on the board of OLPC, they have given us support with the Google Summer of Code, and they are a very friendly company. Their core business, though, is not, is not related at all with education or with the sort of thing we're doing. So I'm not sure whether there will be an opportunity to work together with Google closely in the future about this project. But Google certainly is a good friend to have.
What do you think? Do you think there should be? Do you think Google should kind of work into the hardware business if they were kind of like let's say, supporting OLPC like much more? Does that make sense?
Google recently has started to work on first handheld devices with Android, and more recently with Chromium OS on small netbooks. So Google is now doing something that is kind of parallel to one laptop per child. There are these small laptops, low cost, and hard to destroy, and easy to replace because the data is not there. But the way Google does this is by having all the services in the cloud, which is something that probably we cannot apply to deployments until we have very good connectivity, and connectivity tends to be a big issue in developing nations. Everything else in their hardware is actually appropriate for would be very appropriate for use in education, except for the fact that they require continuous 3G or Wi-Fi connection.
But Google needs to work on caching and all that in third world countries, no? It has to be a big project for them. Anyways, no?
So Google is actually improving their infrastructure all over the world. Europe and the United States still are the places where we have the most amount of hardware lined up. Asia is emerging, India as well. I don't know the numbers, but for sure Google will get closer and closer to developing nations in the future. It's not clear to me, though, that you can get all the way to schools in a very short period. So when you will have great internet connectivities to schools in rural areas of developing nations, then they're probably you can no longer define them anymore as developing nations. They're going to be fully developed. So we need to, if we want to be there and work with that kind of environment, we really can't use an online-only laptop at this time.
But the idea with Chrome OS is it has to work offline as well. Caching.
Yeah, that is true. Oh, this is what you were asking. So you can do some things offline, but you have to connect every once in a while if you would like to get work done. There is like some offline usage, but that's kind of auxiliary. The whole design is actually to try not to store user data on the laptop and store it only temporarily as a cache, as you just said.
So what do you think about the idea of combining Android and Chrome OS into XO 3.0?
Oh, that's an
Is that a good idea, or is it totally wrong?
So actually people are researching on this. There's a small team in Boston working on the next XO, the XO3, and they're exploring Android and Chrome OS as well.
Because it's open source.
Yeah, because it's open source, so they can take whatever they need and they can change whatever they
can try
to change. The problem with this approach is that it probably takes time to develop a product that's mature and finished for users to use. And I'm not sure they're going to finish this in time for, because we're talking about next year for the XO3. So I'm not sure how much time they do have to get this work
But
done.
it's important that XO3 has to be mass produced. It would be good to see 100 million of them produced, no?
Oh yeah,
and
it
not
would be
just
great,
a
actually.
few.
It would be great. That all depends on what deployment, what strategic decisions deployments will make about hardware. My focus at this time is mostly on software. To me, whether they choose the XO1, the XO2, the XO3, or even different brands of laptops, it doesn't really make a big difference as long as they're running constructionist, software, collaborative. So the kind of software that I'm trying to build with the other Sugar Labs people. Software is actually, in my opinion, what defines the educational experience of one laptop per child. The hardware really is interesting, it's cute, but it's not that special anymore, especially now that the netbook market is fully developed. You can really take hardware off the shelf if you want to.
Are you going to try to convince Google to take over and become a huge OLPC contributor on XO3, let's say, Android?
That's early to say, but Google is a kind of company that actually gets into new markets and new businesses every once in a while, right? Don't they? So you can't exclude that Google might get interested at some point. I see education technology as a market that's still immature, but it's starting to move, especially Latin America is very big on it, and Africa is following, and Asia is also coming up. The moment that large corporates like Google see the numbers and start to see the numbers of tens of millions or hundreds of millions, then they will certainly get interested. And at this time, I hope we're going to be made all obsolete. So I hope there will be no need for one laptop per child or Sugar Labs, because Google and other large corporates are actually producing stuff that's so much better than ours that we don't need to do anything. We just sit back and enjoy this success.